You're listening to a TGM production. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of my solo. Have you heard the last one? You'll know what I mean. Solo podcast, Chatterbox, where I, your host Mason, chats until he's fed up with chatting. Last episode was, let me have a look. Let me find out how long it was, because that determines that the format, to me, is a success. Because if I know that I can just talk and stay interesting, then that's great. So, our last episode, which was 2 weeks, which was on the 8th of January 2026, today's date is the 27th of January 2026. That was 35 minutes and 31 seconds. Now the caveat with that was that the reason why that was longer than, let's say, most is because in 2025 I recorded a segment that ended up being involved in it that must have been like 5 or 6 minutes. So really, it was all a little bit like, oh yeah, of course it's going to be that length because I've got an extra bit in it that was pre-recorded a year earlier, so it's going to be that length anyway. So you've got to take that into consideration when questioning whether or not this format works. Now, usually in this podcast, and I might have mentioned this in the last one, we don't normally have format points, we don't normally have discussion points, and we don't normally have areas and aspects that we're going to cover. But as I am trying to improve this podcast in general, and the whole output of TGM, my production company, in a whole, to improve the format, you've got to experiment. And I think that's what this podcast does. It lets me experiment, and it also lets me give out my opinions and things that the TGM podcast could never do. So, if you go onto my website, tommason.uk/podcast page, you will now see there is a brand new updated page, because I'm learning how to do websites all the time. So, on this new podcast page, you'll see categorised from comedy, Doctor Who, to entertainment, to TV show review based podcasts. So review ones include what about the British TV show The Avengers, which will return. My Six Idiots podcast technically straddles the difference between TV show review and sort of entertainment. This one's in the entertainment category. Doctor Who ones include the Blue Box Files and Timey-Wimey, which is Bingo Bob's new podcast. Cause you couldn't call it Timey-Wimey with Bingo Bob because that wouldn't make any sense, and the title would be too long. It's like Real Time with Bill Myers, which I've never seen. I've never wanted to watch that show. It's American, so I'm not really into that scene. It's John Oliver's an exception because John Oliver's brilliant, but that just seems like a really lengthy time. Real Time with Bill Myers. It's like Real Time with Bill Myers. If you want to podcast that up, if you look at the format for the BBC, they're not going to have enough room. What's the story? Ashley Stories. I can sort of explain. I can sort of see why you would think, after what I've just said, that's an incredibly long title. But it sort of works really well in the image, because there's not really much going on in the image. So you've got enough room for the text. But that sort of breaks my point. Anyway, so what we're looking at in a sort of broader sense, in my opinion, is that the page is being improved all the time. It's being upgraded so that it's sort of advertises the podcasts in a good way rather than in a sort of weird, sort of bad way, if you will. Because before, if you had them all connected, then I have my archive, sorry. You had them all connected, it's like, what? Then I have my archive podcasts that are my portal box, which I'm probably going to listen to what I did on that and see if I can adapt that into an interesting video film for Gogglebox World, because I think that there must be a possibility that I could make that work in a more interesting sense. So I could develop that to make it something else. So hopefully, at some point soon, I'll be able to do that. I'll be able to look at it and go, right, that's really good, but how do I develop it to make it 10 times better, 20 times better, 30 times better, so that it fits with how I sort of produce things today in 2026. Because with my interviews, that's what I'm doing on Tom Mason's interviews. I'm improving them to say, well, yes, I really enjoyed that interview then, but is it as good as it could have been now? Has my editing style changed? Has the way I make things changed? Has everything developed? Which the answer to that question is yes. Everything has developed. Everything has changed. And I think that that's what you need over time, is development, change, and ways to say, yep, we've improved. Now, since our last podcast on Chatterbox, at least, I have now got 33 YouTube channels instead of 32. On my brand new YouTube channel, 33 is called The Watchers. Now, on this YouTube channel, where you're watching this, whether you're watching the YouTube version, if you're watching it on here, you could be watching the version on Spotify. But I did a series on here called Tom TV Show Reviews, right? I did 70 odd episodes, and now I've created a new YouTube channel called The Watchers. Now, The Watchers is a YouTube channel that is aimed for my reviews, but is aimed to spread out the reviews. So there won't be 70 odd episodes upload onto that channel, right? So I am going to upload the old episodes from the third channel, but there's a caveat. I think I've mentioned this several times, but I'll mention it on the podcast so that it's definitely evident on this channel, the third channel, the Weird Side, where on the Watcher will be all the reviews apart from Ghosts, because I've already done a compilation of that for my YouTube channel, Button House Confidential, and there won't be any crime drama reviews on there because they're being adapted for my podcast, Only Murders on TV. So that's the situation going on over there. Now, in the land of this channel, because I've now separated that stuff out from that channel, from this channel to a new channel, it means we're at a new place of going, well, what's next for the Weird Side? Well, the Weird Side is a channel where I do podcasts such as the Avengers podcast, my Six Idiots podcast, this podcast, and upcoming projects. I also do reviews of radio shows on this channel. I do discussion videos about the state of TV, and that's and I do videos which is best, like what's better, the Irish Late Late Show or the American Late Late Show, and all that, which is better, BBC iPlayer and Channel 4. I do all that type of shenanigans, so there'll be more of that realm of stuff coming to this channel in the future. So you can look forward to that. Then in the aspect of, hopefully, if me and TGM get our act together, there'll be no more YouTube channels created. But I can't guarantee that. I said 32 was going to be the last YouTube channel created, but that wasn't correct either. That turned out to be a pack of lies, it seemed. But one can only hope. One can only hope that I've decided on the right thing this time, not the wrong thing, the right thing. Because that's what you have to do in life. You have to know that you're talking about the right thing. You have to know that you're promoting the right thing. You have to know you're doing the right thing. Whether it's right morally, that's another problem for another day, on another planet, in another year. That's not a now issue. That's definitely not, I'll repeat, definitely not a now problem. So, the main topics I want to talk about today, I know we're at 10 minutes in and I know I've rambled a lot. That's the beauty of this podcast. I can go, right, today I am going to get out the microphone, get out my stand, pop the microphone on it and go, welcome to Chatterbox, and talk and take it off the microphone, wander up and down, left and right, up and down, side to side, and talk about whatever I want. Because you sort of get a better product, if you will. Podcast-wise, you get a better talking podcast. Yes, I know I'm working on some more scripted podcasts, some more episodes of Down the Rabbit Hole, which is my sketch show podcast, more episodes of What Happened to Albert Philpott, which is slightly tricky at the moment. I can't say too much, but Albert Philpott at the moment is in a weird place of, in the last episode of the podcast, What Happened to Albert Philpott, something occurred, as in, I've added a new dimension to the character, but then I decided to do other stuff with that notion, which meant at the moment I didn't feel like I could do that. In a sense of, I have to sort of like talk around that bit at the moment, even though that is eventually going to be the thing. So, in the last episode of the Albert Philpott podcast, What Happened to Albert Philpott, Albert mentioned that he started dimension hopping, and then did something with that concept, right? And turned out I'm at a crossroads now where I can't really use that concept at the moment. So what I did was I created there's a website called Substack where you do writing of all types. Richard Herring has a blog, Limmy has a blog, Scottish comedian. Grace Jarvis has a blog on there. Technically, you would call that a blog. Who else has a blog on there? A lot of people. Oh, Jane Edwards. A lot of comedians have blogs on there, if you will. Now, I use Substack in my way of presenting my writing work on an article basis, because hopefully one day I want to be able to write for the Doctor Who magazine and Radio Times. So I'm sort of showing off my article work on that. So if you go to tommason.uk/writing, you will see the blogs I used to have when I used to have a blogger blog, and a blog I found that I used to have, which is called Are Aliens Real? Then you'll see my creative writing that I've done exclusively for my website, which develops all the time, and the formatting of how I lay it out changes. Then you'll see my scripts, which is the scripted stuff I've done in audio and in visual. I'm trying to get more of the visual stuff on there that have been published to the world on one of my YouTube channels. You'll see a link to my book that's on Amazon. And then you'll see the Substack, And on the Substack, you'll see articles such as when can you call yourself a comedian, Doctor Who magazine, all this sort of stuff. Then, underneath that, this is the bit that I'm sort of getting to now, which is what I'm on about now, is something called Medium. Now, I was looking up Substack alternative websites because I wanted to do a writing project for Albert Farpot that could sort of share it about, but it could be its own thing separated from me. So, Albert Farpot's diary, the diary of Albert Farpot, was born, which is him writing down his diary digitally, not thinking the internet would see it. Now, years ago, not that long ago actually, I created a Twitter account for Albert Farpot. I also have a Twitter account for TGM. I also have a Facebook account for TGM. I need to add... Anyway, so what I did on that account was for a while where he created this sort of world of... He went to go watch Alan Partridge live. He made a joke every so often. And then he sort of like... And then I made it into the world of that failed and that no longer could happen anymore. And I left it. But then I decided to create the Albert Farpot diary. And I thought, well, what would be funny is if Albert didn't know he was being linked online, his diary, and then he had to make a conscious effort the rest of the time to make a diary that was internet friendly. He wasn't going to incriminate himself too much. He wasn't going to say anything that, if it got leaked again, would upset anyone, because that's the last thing he wants. So he's like, oh no, it's leaked again, oh no. And then that's like, but it's a way of promoting the diary as well. So on that webpage, you'll see my Medium diary. You'll also find, if you go to the homepage, you'll see a section that says comedy, a bit that says comedy character, and a side bit that says Albert Farpot. That's what the page currently looks like, which is everything just in one go. But I am eventually going to categorise it. So if you wanted to look at Albert Farpot's sitcoms, you want to look at the sketches Albert Farpot appeared in, if you want to look at the diary entries, you want to look at his podcast, you want to look at his Twitter account, you want to look at that time that he went on to Bandcamp, you want to listen to his Bandcamp song that's attached to the sitcom, then it'll all be laid out, and I've utilised that page from Tom Burgess's website, because Tom Burgess, who's an excellent comedian who I've interviewed, you can find that interview on Tom's Comedy Club. He had a section of his comedy character, Peter Fleming, and I was really inspired by the way he sort of described the character, the way he sort of explained it before he showcased the material that he's got for the character. Because he does a lot of live stuff for the character. Unlike me, they do a lot of recordings and sitcoms and all that. He does a lot of live stuff with it. So he didn't have as much online material. He has the podcast, but he didn't have a lot of online material to showcase, because mainly it's live, so he can promote the live stuff he's doing with Peter Fleming. So for me, I was really inspired by the way he described the character, the way it was like, that is a proper synopsis for who the character is, how the character debuted, and all this. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll take inspiration from that, and I'll utilise that as my blueprint. So I went onto my website, I went onto my Albert Farpot section, and went, right, so Albert Farpot was my main character. All these other comedy characters are ones I'm working on and working with and playing about with, right? But Albert Farpot is my Alan Partridge. He's my Peter Fleming, where, yes, Steve Coogan had other characters, like Pauline Calf, Paul Calf, and all this, but it was Alan Partridge that was a success, and the Alan Partridge that he took into podcasts, into TV, into books, into all sorts, right? So I wrote this thing, and I thought, yeah, it's inspired by, and you can see where my inspiration is coming from when reading, if you look at Tom Burgess's. And you can sort of go, oh yeah, I see what he's done there. But I just want to go one step further and categorise them. So you've got your sitcoms, your sketch shows, your online writing work, the Twitter, the Bandcamp, the whatever else Albert does next. and you can sort of have it all easily navigatable and easy to get hold of. And if you want to watch an episode of a sitcom, then if you go to the website, you can find a sitcom section, and choose an episode from there. Is it series 1 or is it series 2? We also have a miscellaneous section, which is where I've not yet worked out what genre of comedy it is. So, Mission Albert, I think it was. I'm not too sure what genre that is. And Albert Flowerpot's Christmas Messages. I'm not too sure what genre they are yet. They'll be the miscellaneous section on the website. So, now that we are 20 minutes into our podcast, now we're going to get on to the topic at hand. Because what we've noticed with the Chatterbox is that I am just going to talk and talk and talk and talk, and we're not really going to get to the point of what I want to talk about, which is fair enough, which is excellent, good, brilliant, amazing, whatever, right? It sort of works in that sense of, yeah, it might not be the greatest idea formatally, but yeah, Chatterbox isn't a format. So, right now, I was just about to say we're going to get on to the main topic point of today, and I'm now talking about topic points and formats and whatnot, and I think that just adds to the brilliantness of this podcast, because it's like, oh yeah, that's really comical, that's really silly, you know. So, let's get on to it. Today it is Tuesday, the 27th of January 2026, and today we're going to talk about my formatting point. Now we're just going to put you onto the tripod, the mic stand, so I can explain this point slightly more. We're just basically, when I'm using the mic stand, you have to sort of like get it to the right way so that you can move the mic clip up and down as many times as you like to make it get into a comfortable holding position. When you're pretending you're being a Western singer. I'm a Western singer. La 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 la. I'm a Western singer. La 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 la. So, let's talk about our main topic points. Today, I was listening to the Rest is Entertainment podcast, hosted by Richard Osmond and Marina Hyde. Right, caveat, I absolutely adore the podcast, but this evidenced my problem with podcasting, right? Not just this podcast, but other podcasts do it as well, but don't do it as annoyingly. So, let's track back. Podcasting, since the birth of the video podcast and the birth of finding revenue streams to sort of like sell the podcast so that people buy, like, give you the money to fund the podcast, but you can also give them extras. So, the Comedian's Comedian podcast, if you pay the money, you pay a small monthly fee, like a subscription, so if you will, you get the visual versions, right? Fair, and you get extras, and that's fair enough. Same with Richard Herring. That is fair enough, because you're not losing out on much. So the visual versions of the Richard Herring thing are really good, are brilliant, but the audio version is equally as good. There's nothing too different. You might miss a monthly Q&A with Richard Herring and his ventriloquism doll, right? So, yeah, but there's a perk there, and you get information slightly earlier. Fair enough, that's fine. But the issue I've got is with the rest of the entertainment's, like, sort of like members club, right? Yeah, you're allowed to do that, but no, you're not gonna rub it into my face. With a members club, Richard Herring has got his own website for it. Stuart Lee has got the Patreon for it, right? They're in separate sections. But when you're looking on Spotify, you don't get tormented by these extras with a padlock on them, right? You don't get sort of tormented by all this. Because it's not like, oh, look what you could have won. Woo! Yeah! Now, the rest of entertainment airs Tuesdays and Thursdays. On Tuesday, it's a deep dive into whatever they're talking about that week. And on a Thursday, it's a Q&A type thing where you ask questions and they answer them, right? And they talk about them in their length, however much length you want to talk about. And yeah, hunky dory, piddly bum, woohoo, yeah, yeah. Brilliant, excellent, thank you, bye. But what seems to occur for them more than anyone else is, I don't know if it's like that with the other Resties podcasts, because I don't really follow any of the others. I tried to listen to the classified one. It wasn't as good as it was making out to be. But what you get from it is this. So, yes, you can look at the new episode. Yeah, Tuesdays, all about the news in media. And yes, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I haven't got a single whiff of problem with it. What I have got a problem with, which you can probably gather, is they did an episode where it was a day in the life of working at Richard Osman's House of Games. It was a day in the life of... it was what's it like working at Aardman Animation. Two extremely fascinating subject points. House of Games being Richard Osman's House of Games, or my favourite, Claire Hooper's House of Games. But it's two different productions, two different settings, and two different countries, really. So you sort of get the gist of what it's like. Then you have Aardman, which is new, recent, but it's like, that sounds incredible. I would love to listen to that. But again, I shouldn't have to pay to listen to that. Because of the nature of the podcast, that should be a Tuesday episode. That should be like the Simon Cowell interview, where they didn't put that behind a paywall, but you could get it early if you wanted to, right? But it should be available eventually to the public. Because the public will want to see that, and not everyone can afford a subscription. Now, Apple Podcasts, I don't know if that's free generally, but if people have enough money to be able to afford to get themselves a mobile phone, a computer, or an iPad/tablet thing, right? Or a computer or a laptop, whatever, right? They might not, and not everyone has enough money to buy Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Acorn TV, Viaplay, MGM Plus, Lionsgate Plus, Paramount Plus, trying to think now, Apple Music. Not everyone Deezer, Sky TV. Not everyone has enough. So if, let's take for example, a family, right, has enough money to buy a mobile phone and a laptop. Right? They have a TV because he had that money yonks ago. So they've got Freeview or Freely, whichever one's the one that is now in use. Yeah. At that point, they don't have the money to get Netflix. They don't have the money for Disney Plus. But they want to listen to music on a streaming platform. Well, they're in luck. Spotify is free. Yeah? There's limitations, and fair enough, they're fine. If you listen to podcasts, there is no problem with Spotify. If you listen with music, you're going to get what you're going to get, right? The web version and the iPad/tablet version are better than the mobile version, but you sort of get a good enough experience to not be missing out on anything, right? So what the problem is you've got now is that you might have, let's say, the eldest son is really into media and really into all this, right? And he saves up his pocket money and buys a DVD each week, can watch this, that, the other, right? So, what did he do now? He's really into Watson Gromit, let's say, for this example. And he really wants to listen to the to the club episode of the rest of his entertainment because they love the rest of his entertainment. But they want to listen about talk to Nick Park about Aardman animation, and they haven't got enough money for it. And no matter how many times he asks, it's like, I'm really sorry, but if we had enough money, we could. And at that point, they're missing out on something that might have been brilliant, and you miss out on the opportunity to listen to that. I don't know if they ever filmed them to make them visual, so I'm just going to use listening it as the term. So it's like that's not right. You've just blocked out a selection of families, if you will, that can't listen to that episode of the thing, and to me, that's unfair. Now, if you look deep enough, right, whether or not this is illegal or not, on Spotify, someone has turned the paying club into free and uploads every episode of the paid version of the podcast. Now, I discovered that. I thought, oh yeah, I think that's real. That's made by them, and I listened to the audio quality. Yeah, that's definitely not made by Goalhanger, who make the rest of these podcasts, and it's definitely not made by Richard Osman or Marina Hyde at all. I don't think they actually do all the technical stuff either anyway. So that's not any loss on them making it work, but I think they have lost out on some moolah, some cash, some bread, if you will. So what I've sort of learned from that is like, yeah, someone has tried to combat that problem, and I think they've combated it quite well. But I think there is other ways to sort of fix that problem, if you will. There's not necessarily always going to be a problem about it, but really, it shouldn't have happened in the first place, right? So, if you can see that to be a problem, then how do you report that? There's no report button to say this podcast is pretending to be someone else and not, because otherwise there'll be a lot of podcasts that will be taken down, and that'll be a hassle on Spotify's point of view. So I just don't think they should put those episodes behind a paywall, because I personally think that you will get a lot more out of it. I think you get money from the adverts on Spotify, I think. So I just don't think you're doing yourself any favours by doing that in the first place. So I would suggest that we knock that on the head. Keep doing what you're doing with it, but knock it on the head from that point of view. Yes, have it so if people don't want to listen to the adverts or want to give you a few quid to keep the podcast afloat, fair enough, but keep all the exclusives, like an interview with Aardman or the day-to-day life of what it's like working on Richard Osman's house game. Keep all that for free. Keep that for free, and so that people can listen to it, enjoy it, and not go, ugh. I know that they give out courtesy subscriptions if you're heavily involved in helping the podcast, such as there's someone that on social online that helped with the game show contestants segment on one of the podcasts once, and helped with all the detail that needed to be disclosed within that, and then they gave him a complimentary subscription, and it's like, excellent, well done. That, I'll be honest, was deserved. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's deserved. Everything's fine, hunky dory. Thank you very much. Next. But for people like this fictional family, right? They're really gutted because they can't do that, and obviously they want to get it in the highest quality, and they want to get it from a source that is directly from Goalhanger, and it's like, well, someone's just taking that away from them because they're gonna get a really bad recording, and they're like, oh, this is awful, and never listen to the podcast again, and it's giving it a bad reputation, and that's not a good thing at all. Giving a podcast like that a bad reputation is the word I'm trying to say, but I'm currently struggling to say. So, how do we combat that? Well, to be honest, there is literally no way to combat that. There is nothing you can do that goes, right, here's the solution to this problem that no one knew really was a problem. And that's like, well, yeah, okay, well, we've got a problem, how do you fix it? Well, someone once said, how do you solve a problem like Maria? And to be honest, I really will be honest, I don't think you can solve a problem like Maria, because only Maria can solve the problem. And that's not anyone's issue other than Maria's. Because the Hills are alive with the sound of music, but really, no, they weren't. They weren't alive with the sound of music, because they're the only ones singing. The band, the Hills are like... That's her again. In her head, the music's in her head. So the Hills can't be alive with the sound of music. Thank you very much. So, as we draw a close to this wonderful episode of the podcast, currently at 36 minutes and 55 seconds, we're going to wait until we're at 37. We'd like to say this has been the longest version of the podcast, and I like to say Shemai, which is hello. I'd like to say North with Dart, which I think means good afternoon, and I like to say Diok, which means thanks, or Diok and Val, which means thank you, I think, if I've got that correct. The last thing I want to discuss just before we leave is 3 things. I'm currently working on a documentary called The Learners, or The Learning. I've not yet decided the title. In this documentary, I talk about what I'm trying to learn. So, I attempt to learn a chord or 2 on the banjolele, which apparently the banjolele chords are just the ukulele chords on a banjolele. I'm trying to learn languages, but the amount of languages I was trying to learn before are still the amount of languages, but there's certain languages I want to focus on, so Welsh, Shemai, Bonadar, Dysgu Cymraeg. Dysgu Cymraeg means I am learning Welsh, or learning Welsh if you really want to be pedantic about it. So, Welsh, Irish, which I know next to none of, even though I've been trying to learn it for years. Welsh, Irish, Gaelic, the Scottish Gaelic, Cornish are the key ones I'm trying to learn. Because I think that so I know this from watching the film Fisherman's Friend. So once you know Welsh, it makes it incredibly easier to learn Cornish, because even though they're all in the same language family, Cornish and Welsh sort of merge together in a sense of they're like brothers or cousins, if you will. So the DNA of the words are there. So if you watch an episode of The Fisherman's Friend, right, an episode of it, it's on a TV show. If you watch the film Fisherman's Friend, Once and For All or something, the second one, there is a scene where they're auditioning a new member of the band, and they all have a conversation. There's a Welsh fella, right? I think he just moved to Cornwall, and they're all having a conversation in Cornish. And they're having the conversation, blah, blah, and he went, "Oh, I understood all that." They went, "How?" I went, "Well, I know Welsh, so it's quite similar." And that is correct, because there's a lot of vowel sounds and a lot of words that might mean something different, but it's not too dissimilar. So a lot of Welsh speakers can pick up Cornish quite quickly. I don't think it's the same for Scottish Gaelic and the Irish. I don't think if you know Scottish Gaelic, you can easily understand Irish. I don't think they sort of work in that sort of way, because I do think there's probably a lot more difference. But this series this documentary, is going to be me learning these things. Now, for years, I've been trying to learn Welsh. I've been trying to learn these languages, and so in that documentary, I said at the very beginning of it, which is no longer going to be the case, that I'm creating a YouTube channel to learn, because I think that that's going to make me learn better. But no, 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 no. What's going to happen is that's just going to be the documentary series, right? It's going to be a documentary where over the months I'm going to try and learn these things. By the end of it, I want to know more than just the one we Hoffy Coffee, which is I like coffee, or do one we podcasts. Yeah, no. See, I like podcasts. Do one we ferret, Hoffy Ferret. I like ferrets. See, what you want is I want to be able to say a full sentence at least in the language. But when I first started to learn Welsh, it was all to watch S4C without the subtitles needed, not really to learn to speak it. But I have a YouTube channel called Tom Jarvu. Tom Jarvu was originally supposed to be an accessible channel, where I get a video or a film or whatever I've done, and I make it accessible. So add subtitles / closed captions, add audio description, and then add obviously a sign interpreter for BSL exclusively, because I'm British and I'm from England, and so that's the sort of world I'm in the British sense. So, but then the BSL is slightly troubled at the moment due to the fact that a solution I thought to easily do that in a quicker way is to find a website that doesn't use AI, doesn't really charge you, where it's not a PNG, because that's what you call it in photography and image terms, but it's sort of like a visual representation of. It's like Channel 4, so you don't longer have the box. We have to shove your thing small in the box, but you can resize, reshape how you want the interpreter to look in the thing, and you just then import the video to that website. They then translate it for sign and have the sign interpreter do all the things, and then they spit it back at you in a few days or whatever. And then you've got that footage. You've got the video, the film, the whatever back with a sign interpreter in the corner, but in this editor on this website, you sort of say, well, they give you a silhouette of what the representation of the sign interpreter you choose, like male, female, tall, short, whatever, all the different dimensions of the person you're after. Then you resize it to what you want, and then they go off and do it and send it back in a few days. And I think spending like £10 would be fine, but it needs to not be look so AI is what I find. So if there's ways of doing that, if anyone knows, let me know in the comments and wherever you're looking at this. I think that would enhance that channel. Then the other thing I decided was that if I try and learn Cornish, Welsh, if I try and learn them to speak instead of just learn them to listen, then I could try and translate the videos, the films, or whatever into those languages. But as we all can now gather, it's taking an incredibly long time. Now, the reason why I want to learn some banjolele chords isn't just because I've got a banjolele and I want to be able to use it. It's because I want to attempt to do some musical comedy. So knowing the basic chords would help you to develop that musical comedy. I know I'm not a great singer or can't sing full stop, but I think it would be interesting to try and attempt to do some musical comedy. So, as we reach the 44 mark of this incredible, excellent podcast, we're going to end it there. Thank you for listening. This has been Chatterbox. I have really chattered on.